Signs of low intelligence. Magical thinking. Some people live their lives as if luck is running the show. They wear the same lucky socks to every test, avoid walking under ladders, or believe a certain color brings them money. It feels harmless, even kind of funny, but it's actually a sign of low critical thinking. Instead of looking at real cause and effect, magical thinking relies on superstition. Psychologists say this comes from the brain confusing coincidence with patterns. Maybe once you wore those socks and something good happened, and now your brain links the two forever. Smarter minds pause and ask, what's the actual evidence here? Lower intelligence skips that step and builds habits out of pure belief. Depending on charms and hunches to guide your choices might make life feel easier, but it also means you're not really using logic. In the end, the universe isn't rigged to your sock choices. Chronic sleep neglect. You tell yourself you're fine on 4 hours of sleep. Maybe you brag about it. Maybe you scroll on your phone until 3 a.m. and then crawl out of bed like a zombie. The truth? Skipping sleep doesn't make you tough. It makes you slower. Research shows that lack of sleep damages memory, attention, and decision-making. In fact, after a night without rest, your brain works about as well as if you were drunk. Smarter people know their brain is their most important tool, so they guard their sleep like gold. Lower intelligence often shows up in the form of treating rest like it's optional, then wondering why nothing gets done the next day. If you're constantly sacrificing sleep for no good reason, it's not genius, it's self-sabotage. Because at the end of the day, running on an empty tank doesn't make you powerful. Avoiding time alone. Some people just cannot stand silence. If the TV isn't on, the music's not playing, or friends aren't around, they start to panic. Being alone with their own thoughts feels unbearable, so they constantly fill the space with noise and distractions. The problem? That habit can signal low intelligence. Smart people usually use alone time to think, reflect, and solve problems. But if you always need background noise or company, it might mean there's not much happening upstairs when things get quiet. Psychologists say that intelligent minds often prefer solitude because it gives them room to process ideas. Lower intelligence, on the other hand, looks for constant stimulation to avoid boredom. If you can't sit with yourself for even a few minutes without reaching for a screen or calling someone, it's not because you're social. It might just mean your brain struggles when it's finally asked to do the heavy lifting. Although this has been heavily skewed in recent years due to people's ability to fill every silence with their phones. Living on small talk. Some people can talk for hours without saying anything. It's always about the weather, the traffic, or what they had for lunch. Sure, a little small talk is normal, but if that's the only conversation you ever have, it can be a red flag. Intelligent people usually crave deeper discussions, ideas, questions, possibilities. Sticking only to surface-level chatter often signals a lack of curiosity or critical thinking. Psychologists call it low need for cognition, basically, not enjoying effortful thought. And while chatting about the rain is fine as an icebreaker, never moving past it makes you look shallow. If your best line at a party is, "Wow, can you believe it's already Friday?" and you have nothing else to add, you're just filling silence. Smart people see small talk as a door. Confidence without content. You've probably met someone who talks like they're the smartest person in the room, but the moment you listen closely, there's nothing there. They speak loudly, interrupt others, and explain things they don't actually understand. This is a classic sign of low intelligence. Real smart people ask questions, admit when they don't know something, and try to learn. But lower intelligence often hides behind confidence, using tone and volume instead of substance. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who know the least often think they know the most. So, while they're busy lecturing everyone on topics they barely understand, sharper minds are quietly analyzing and actually learning. Blindly following instructions. Some people will do exactly what the manual says, even when it makes no sense. If the IKEA guide shows a screw going into thin air, they'll still try to force it. If a recipe says, bake for 20 minutes, but the food is clearly raw, they'll eat it anyway. This isn't discipline. It's a lack of critical thinking. Smarter minds test, adapt, and improvise when things don't add up. Lower intelligence sticks to the page, even if it leads off a cliff. Studies point out that low IQ often comes with rigid thinking, an inability to adjust when reality doesn't match the plan. Instructions are supposed to guide you, not replace your brain. Falling for conspiracies and superstitions. Some people truly believe the Earth is flat, vaccines have microchips, or that their bad day happened because of a planet's position in the sky. This isn't open-mindedness. It's low critical thinking. Conspiracies and superstitions are comforting because they give simple answers to complicated problems. Instead of digging for facts, people accept the first explanation that feels exciting or dramatic. This is called a mental shortcut. The brain is lazy, so it prefers easy stories over messy truths. Smarter minds question and double-check before believing. Lower intelligence tends to say, well, I saw it online, so it must be true. The problem is that superstition and conspiracy thinking stop people from solving real issues. Rigid thinking. Some people treat their routines and beliefs like stone tablets that can never be changed. If something new comes along, whether it's a better way to work, a new piece of technology, or even just a different opinion, they shut it down instantly. This kind of my way or nothing attitude is often a sign of low intelligence. Smart people can adapt. They ask questions, try things out, and adjust when the facts change. But rigid thinkers cling to the old way just because it's familiar. Psychologists say this comes from mental inflexibility, an inability to handle uncertainty or complexity. Life is full of surprises, and if your brain can't bend, it breaks. If your first response to every change is, "That's not how we do things," you're not proving you're wise, you're proving you're stuck. Always seeking instant gratification. Some people just can't wait. If they want a snack, they grab junk food instead of cooking. If they want something new, they buy it on credit instead of saving. If work feels boring, they drop it for a quick scroll on their phone. This constant need for instant rewards is a classic sign of low intelligence. Smarter minds are better at delaying gratification. They can push through discomfort now to get something better later. But lower intelligence struggles with patience and long-term planning. Psychologists have shown in studies, like the famous marshmallow test, that kids who couldn't wait often grew up to have more problems with school, money, and health. If you're always chasing the quickest fix, it doesn't mean you're living well. It means you're living short-sighted. Real brain power is knowing that the best rewards take time. Poor listening habits. We've all talked to someone who never really listens. They interrupt, talk over you, or nod while clearly waiting for their turn to speak. This isn't just bad manners, it can be a sign of low intelligence. Listening is more than hearing words. It's about processing ideas and understanding perspectives. Smarter people know they can learn something new from almost anyone, so they pay attention. But lower intelligence often shows up as impatience, or the assumption that they already know everything worth saying. There is a link between poor listening and weak comprehension skills. When the brain struggles to follow complex thoughts, it tunes out instead. If you constantly cut people off or forget what they just said, you're not proving you're quick. You're proving your brain isn't keeping up. Listening is one of the simplest ways to grow, and refusing to do it shows you're not interested in growth at all. Dismissing new ideas instantly. You probably know someone who says, "That's dumb," or "That'll never work," the moment they hear something new. They don't ask questions, they don't think it over, they just shut it down. This knee-jerk reaction is often a sign of low intelligence. Smarter people keep an open mind. They may not accept every idea, but they at least consider the possibilities before deciding. Lower intelligence, on the other hand, avoids the effort of thinking and chooses the easy route: rejection. Excessive TV and doom scrolling. There's nothing wrong with relaxing and watching a show or checking your feed. But when hours slip away every single day, it can be a sign of low intelligence. Smart people usually balance entertainment with learning, creating, or problem-solving. Lower intelligence often shows up as endless passive consumption, letting the brain rot instead of using it. Science warns that constant scrolling trains your mind to crave short bursts of dopamine, making it harder to focus on deeper tasks. Instead of reading a book, learning a skill, or having a real conversation, you end up trapped in an endless loop of clips, memes, and reruns. The more time you spend zoning out, the less energy your brain has for growth. If your main daily achievement is finishing a season or finishing your For You page, you're on mental autopilot. Explaining blindly following trends. Think about that one friend who changes their whole personality every time a new trend comes along. One month, they're wearing Nike because TikTok said so. The next, they're suddenly obsessed with Adidas. And last week, they were filming themselves dancing in a grocery store for no reason. They never stop to ask if they actually like these things. They just copy what everyone else is doing. This isn't creativity, it's a lack of critical thinking. Smarter people pause and ask, does this trend even make sense? Do I want it, or am I just copying? But lower intelligence thrives on going with the herd. It's called the herd mentality, following others to feel safe. If your entire identity changes with whatever's trending, try to change it. Bro on the game. We've all got that one friend who's always on the game, but somehow still terrible at it. He's online every night, headset on, but when the match starts, he misses every shot, forgets the objectives, and blames lag for everything. Spending hours playing doesn't make you skilled. It just shows how little you're actually learning. Smarter players pick up patterns, adapt strategies, and improve over time. But your buddy is stuck at level 1, repeating the same mistakes like it's muscle memory. If the game keeps teaching you lessons and you keep ignoring them, that's not dedication. It's proof your friend's got a monkey brain. Struggles of high intelligence. You get bored with small talk. You're at a party, holding a drink, trapped in a circle of strangers. Someone says, "So, how about this traffic?" And suddenly, the entire group lights up like it's the most fascinating idea in the world. Heads nod, fake laughs, endless stories about stoplights and bad drivers. Meanwhile, you're staring at the ice cubes in your cup, wondering if anyone here has ever had a single original thought. For most people, small talk is harmless filler, a way to connect without risk. But for highly intelligent people, it's a nightmare. Your brain isn't satisfied with shallow chatter. It wants puzzles, ideas, stories, even arguments, anything with weight. Instead, you're stuck in a loop about the weather, the time, or what someone ate for lunch. Psychologists call this a high need for cognition, a hunger for deep and effortful thought. And when that need isn't met, you start to drift, zoning out while everyone else bonds over nothing. To them, you look rude or antisocial. But in reality, your mind is starving. Because for someone wired to think deeper, silence is more meaningful than another conversation about how, wow, can you believe it's already Friday? You're careful with your words. Most people talk like they're throwing darts in the dark, quick, sloppy, and hoping something sticks. But you? Every sentence feels like a chess move. You pause, rewind, edit in real time, searching for the exact word that won't be misread or misunderstood. In conversation, that makes you seem cautious, even slow. But in your head, you're running a quality control factory. Words go through drafting, testing, and approval before they ever leave your mouth. For highly intelligent people, this isn't just a quirk, it's survival. You know language shapes perception. A careless phrase can ruin an idea, or worse, a relationship. So you weigh every syllable like it's gold. Psychologists call this linguistic precision, the tendency of smarter minds to treat words as tools, not just noise. But here's the downside. While you're sculpting the perfect sentence, everyone else has already moved on. To them, you sound hesitant, maybe even detached. They fill silence with chatter, you fill it with calculations. And when you finally speak, it lands like a scalpel instead of a splash. Careful, exact, but just a little too late for the party. You are socially awkward. It's not that you don't know what to say, it's that your brain is juggling so many thoughts, it forgets to play by the rules. Eye contact, timing, tone, they all glitch when you're too busy analyzing the conversation instead of just living in it. Imagine someone asks, "How's it going?" And instead of a quick, "Good," you pause, overthink, and deliver a 3-minute monologue about your entire week. Or worse, you bring up some obscure fact no one asked for, and the room goes silent. For highly intelligent people, socializing can feel like acting in a play where everyone else got the script, and you didn't. Psychologists say this comes from divergent thinking, the brain's tendency to chase unusual connections. It makes you brilliant with ideas, but clumsy with people. To others, your timing seems off, your humor too niche, your energy a little strange. And while they walk away thinking you're awkward, you walk away replaying the entire moment in your head like a movie, and you wish you could edit it. You struggle to make good friends. Most people treat friendship like fast food. Grab whoever's nearby, call it a bond, and move on. They talk about sports, share a few memes, maybe drink together on the weekends, and that's enough. But for highly intelligent people, it isn't. You don't want something quick and disposable. You want something that lasts. Shallow conversations feel like empty calories. Fake smiles feel like a wet blanket, and being surrounded by people who don't really get you only makes the loneliness louder. So you filter, you hold back, you wait for the rare connection that actually sparks. Researchers who study personality patterns have noticed that smarter people often prefer fewer, deeper friendships, and they're willing to go long stretches without company rather than fill the silence with the wrong crowd. The downside? From the outside, it looks like you're antisocial or picky, but really, you're protecting your energy, because for a mind like yours, one genuine friend means more than 100 acquaintances. And honestly, sitting alone feels less lonely than sitting in a group where nobody's really saying anything. You don't get out much. For most people, a packed weekend means energy. Crowded bars, noisy restaurants, house parties that stretch until sunrise. But for you, that's not energy. It's exhaustion. Crowds drain you. Constant chatter feels like you're going crazy in your head. So instead of running toward the noise, you retreat into quiet spaces where you can actually think. It's not that you dislike people. It's that being around too many at once feels like your brain is stuck with 100 open tabs, all flashing for attention. Over time, you learn that solitude isn't just comfort, it's fuel. Still, from the outside, it doesn't look that way. To everyone else, you're the person who always says no, the friend who disappears, the one who never shows up. They mistake your recharge for rejection. The irony is that you might be thinking about them, caring about them, even planning for them, but you can only do that once you've stepped away. Alone time isn't avoidance, it's maintenance, and without it, your mind burns out. You're overly analytical. Most people can pick a pair of shoes in 2 minutes. You're stuck comparing prices, durability, online reviews, and whether they'll still match your wardrobe 5 years from now. For highly intelligent people, nothing is simple. Your brain refuses to settle for good enough. It's always weighing possibilities, chasing the perfect answer. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, when overthinking turns a simple choice into a marathon. On the bright side, you avoid mistakes most people make. On the dark side, you waste hours trying to make decisions that should take seconds. Friends say you're indecisive, but that's not true. You decide plenty. You just decide slowly, carefully, and with more angles than anyone asked for. And the irony? After all that overthinking, you sometimes end up picking the same thing you would have chosen in the first place. Your mind constantly craves exercise. Most people finish work, flop on the couch, and let their brains go blank. But you can't stand it. When your mind isn't chewing on something, a book, a puzzle, a documentary, even some bizarre Wikipedia rabbit hole, you feel restless. It's like your brain starts pacing in a cage, tapping the bars, demanding something to work on. One night you're solving a crossword until sunrise. The next, you're watching lectures on a topic you'll never use, just because your mind needs the calories. Friends tell you to relax or just watch a show. But for you, mindless entertainment feels like wasting away. Studies have found that smarter people often seek out what's called cognitive stimulation. Basically, tasks that keep the brain lifting heavy instead of coasting. That's why you end up juggling hobbies, side projects, and late-night thought spirals while everyone else is half asleep. It's not about productivity. It's your survival. Because for your brain, rest doesn't mean shutting off. Rest means finding something new to conquer. You're always feeling pressured to succeed. For some people, success is a bonus. If they win, great. If not, life rolls on. But for you, it's different. The moment people notice you're smart, the weight lands. Teachers expect flawless grades. Parents talk about big futures. Friends assume you'll figure out every problem. And worst of all, you expect it from yourself. Every decision feels loaded, because failure doesn't just mean failure. It feels like proof you wasted potential. It's what researchers sometimes call achievement pressure. On the outside, you look driven, ambitious, unstoppable. But inside, it feels like running a race with no finish line. You ace a test, but the next one's harder. You land a promotion, and suddenly the bar rises again. Success doesn't relax you. It only resets the pressure higher. People think intelligence makes life easier, but sometimes it just makes the mountain taller. Because no matter how far you climb, the top keeps moving. You're overly self-critical. Highly intelligent people have a secret curse. You see every flaw in yourself, even the ones nobody else notices. Most people shrug off mistakes. They forget the wrong word they use, the awkward comment they made, the project that wasn't perfect. But you replay it. You pick it apart. You catalog it like evidence in a trial. It's not arrogance. It's the opposite. Your brain notices details so sharply that you can't stop turning them against yourself. Psychologists sometimes call this perfectionistic thinking, the tendency to hold yourself to impossible standards. You finish an essay and think it could have been better. You give a presentation and only remember the one word you stumbled on. And when people praise you, instead of feeling proud, you wonder if they just didn't notice the mistakes. The irony is, being self-critical makes you better, sharper, more careful. But it also means you're never really satisfied. You're chasing an image of yourself that doesn't exist. You get lost in your own thoughts. Most people can switch their brains off. They daydream for a minute, then snap back to reality. But for you, drifting into thought isn't a break, it's a black hole. One moment you're staring at your coffee, and the next you've built an entire theory about time travel, the future of humanity, or why pigeons exist in every city on Earth. Hours slip away without you even noticing. Teachers used to call it not paying attention. Friends say you're spaced out. But inside your head, there's a whole universe unfolding. Researchers call this mind wandering, and in highly intelligent people it tends to go into overdrive. It's creativity, problem solving, and curiosity colliding all at once. The downside? The outside world keeps moving while you're lost in another one. You miss instructions, forget appointments, and walk into rooms not knowing why you're there. From the outside, it looks like distraction, but really it's the cost of a mind that refuses to stay in one place. You over-explain everything. Ask most people for directions, and they'll point left or right. Ask you, and they get a full TED Talk. You can't just give an answer. You give the history, the reasoning, and 3 alternative possibilities. Your brain refuses to hand over surface-level information when there's a deeper layer waiting underneath. On one hand, it makes you thorough. On the other, it makes people's eyes glaze over while you're halfway through explaining the why behind the what. Communication experts sometimes call this the curse of knowledge, when you know too much to keep it simple. To you, details are clarity. To everyone else, they're overload. And when you finally stop talking, the person who asked probably doesn't even remember the original question. The irony is that your explanation is usually correct, but the delivery drowns it in so much extra context that people mistake intelligence for confusion. You question authority more than most. For many people, authority is comforting. If the boss says it, if the teacher writes it, if the rulebook lists it, then it must be right. But for highly intelligent people, blind trust doesn't come easy. You question orders, test assumptions, and sometimes get labeled as difficult because you won't just nod along. It's not rebellion for its own sake, it's instinct. You see flaws, loopholes, and contradictions others miss, and your mind refuses to leave them alone. Studies on critical thinking have shown that smarter people are more likely to challenge authority when something doesn't add up. But this gift comes with social friction. Teachers think you're argumentative. Bosses think you're insubordinate. Friends think you're cynical. All because you'd rather chase truth than follow the script. The worst part? The people who roll their eyes at your questioning often end up relying on you later, once they realize the rules weren't perfect after all. You struggle to enjoy the present. Most people can live in the moment. They enjoy a meal without worrying about tomorrow, or laugh at a joke without dissecting it. But for you, the present is slippery. Your brain is always running ahead, calculating the next step, or circling back, analyzing what already happened. You're sitting at dinner, but you're replaying a conversation from last week. You're on vacation, but you're planning what to do when you get home. Instead of savoring now, you're trapped in before and after. This is sometimes called future-oriented thinking, the ability to imagine outcomes and plan ahead. It's a strength, but it steals the moment right in front of you. People tell you to just relax, or be in the now. But to a mind wired like yours, that's almost impossible. Because while everyone else is living in real time, you're busy living in 2 timelines at once. The one that already happened, and the one that hasn't even started yet. Every personality type explained. The inspector. The inspector is the person who actually reads the instruction manual, twice. They're practical, grounded, and allergic to chaos. If life were a group project, they're the ones setting up the spreadsheet while everyone else is still figuring out what the assignment even is. They value order, rules, systems, routines. To an inspector, stability isn't boring, it's freedom. They know where things are, how things work, and what happens if you cut corners, because they've already checked 3 times. These are the people who balance the budget, fix the printer, and show up on time even when the invite was vague. But it's not just about rules. At their core, inspectors are loyal. If they commit to something, a job, a friend, a promise, They follow through, even when it's inconvenient. Some call them rigid, but inspectors would call it dependable. The downside? They can struggle when the world refuses to play by the rules they love so much. Sudden change? Last-minute improvisation? That's their nightmare. But give them a plan, a process, and some peace and quiet, and they'll quietly keep the world turning while everyone else is panicking. The campaigner. The campaigner is basically human caffeine. Walk into a room, and suddenly the vibes are louder, the jokes are faster, and you're somehow agreeing to go on a road trip at 2 a.m. with people you just met. These are the people who treat sleep as more of a suggestion than a requirement. They're idea machines, constantly brainstorming, constantly starting projects. Finishing them? That's optional. A campaigner's Google Drive is a graveyard of abandoned side hustles, half-written novels, and business pitches that sounded genius at 3 in the morning. But here's the thing. You can't stay mad at them. They're charming, infectious. They make you believe that yes, you should quit your job, move to Bali, and start a kombucha empire. And even if it crashes and burns, you'll at least have a great story. The flip side? Chaos. The nurturer. The nurturer is the person who remembers your birthday, your dog's name, and that weird story you told them 3 years ago about getting stuck in an elevator. They're loyal, attentive, and always looking out for the people they care about. In a group, they're the quiet anchor. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one you can actually depend on. They thrive on responsibility. If something needs to get done, they'll take it on, even if it means staying up late to finish the work no one else wanted. Some people call them selfless. Others call them people pleasers. The truth is somewhere in between. They want harmony. They want others to feel safe. But sometimes that means they forget about their own needs. The downside? They can burn out from giving too much. But when balanced, nurturers are the steady heartbeat of any family, team, or friendship circle, quietly holding everything together while the world spins. The mastermind. The mastermind doesn't just play the game. They're 3 moves ahead, already planning how to win. Strategic, private, relentless. They live in their own mental war room, constantly running scenarios. While others react, they calculate. They crave improvement, precision, and control. To a mastermind, perfection isn't optional. It's expected. They're not interested in small talk or sugarcoating. They want systems, logic, results. That intensity can make them feel cold, even intimidating. But underneath is a drive to build something lasting, something that actually works. The danger? They can isolate themselves, convinced no one else can keep up. They might dismiss emotions as weakness, forgetting that not everything can be solved with a blueprint. But when a mastermind finds balance, pairing their ruthless vision with patience and humanity, they don't just succeed, they change entire worlds. The virtuoso. The virtuoso is the person who sees a locked door and immediately thinks, I wonder if I can pick that. They're hands-on, impulsive, and allergic to boredom. If there's a problem, they'll take it apart, mess with it, and probably fix it, or at least break it in a more interesting way. They live for the moment. Planning, schedules, that's prison. A virtuoso wants to dive headfirst into action, whether it's building something in their garage, booking a trip on a whim, or convincing their friends to try cliff diving at 2 a.m. The catch? Commitment is not their strong suit. They can be flaky, restless, and allergic to anything that feels repetitive. But the upside is that life with a virtuoso is never dull. They bring energy, risk, and a little bit of chaos. And sometimes that's exactly what a stagnant world needs. The artist. The artist moves through the world like life itself is a canvas. Quiet, gentle, and deeply sensitive. They see beauty where others see nothing. A crack in the sidewalk, a song half heard, the way sunlight cuts through dusty blinds. It all carries meaning. They live in the moment, following their feelings like a compass. To them, rules are suggestions, and conformity feels like suffocation. They'd rather paint outside the lines, literally or metaphorically, than march to someone else's beat. That freedom makes them creative, compassionate, and unpredictable. But it's not always easy being this attuned. Their emotions can swing hard, leaving them vulnerable to self-doubt or pulling away when the world feels too sharp. Still, when they open up, they bring color to everyone around them, turning ordinary days into something quietly extraordinary. The mediator. The mediator lives with one foot in reality and the other in a world only they can see. They're dreamers, idealists, and quiet warriors for what feels true and meaningful. To them, life isn't about climbing ladders or chasing trophies. It's about staying connected to purpose, to values, to the things that make your soul feel alive. They're compassionate to a fault, always seeing the good in people, even when it's buried deep. But that kindness can also trap them. They'll forgive too much, stay too long, or lose themselves in someone else's story. Their inner world is vivid and rich, but it can make the outside world feel heavy, even hostile. Still, when they channel that imagination into action, mediators inspire change. They remind us that the quietest voices often carry the deepest truths. The thinker. The thinker is the kid who took apart the toaster just to see how it worked. Analytical, curious, and slightly allergic to small talk, they spend more time in their head than anywhere else. For them, the world is one giant puzzle, and every question is another piece waiting to be solved. They thrive on theory, not what is, but what could be. They'll happily debate abstract ideas for hours, then forget to eat lunch because they got lost in thought. On the plus side, they're inventive and original. On the downside, don't expect them to remember where they left their keys. The thinker's weakness? They can get so wrapped up in concepts that reality feels like an afterthought. But when they balance their endless curiosity with just enough practicality, they're the ones who rewrite the rules the rest of us live by. The dynamo. The dynamo is pure adrenaline in human form. These are the people who treat speed limits as suggestions and think responsibility is just a funny word adults made up. If something looks risky, they're already halfway through doing it before anyone else has finished saying, bad idea. They live for the thrill. Fast cars, big bets, last-minute decisions. To them, the safe option is the boring option. They're magnetic, reckless, and somehow always have a story that starts with, so there I was, and ends with, and that's how I wound up in the ER. But beneath the chaos, dynamos are problem solvers. Put them in a crisis, and they'll find a way out while everyone else is panicking. The problem? Stability feels like a trap. They're always chasing the next high. Still, when the world needs someone bold enough to jump first, the dynamo is already in the air. The performer. The performer was basically born with a spotlight overhead. They walk into a room and instantly become the main character, whether they planned it or not. Loud, fun, and effortlessly magnetic, they thrive on attention the way plants thrive on sunlight. These are the friends who'll convince you to go out on a Tuesday, spend too much money, and end up dancing on a table, and somehow make you feel like it was the best decision of your life. They're entertainers, charmers, natural mood boosters. But here's the catch. The party never lasts forever. When the music stops, performers can struggle with the silence. They hate boredom, avoid responsibility, and sometimes cover insecurity with charisma. Still, when they're balanced, they remind everyone around them that life isn't meant to be endured. It's meant to be enjoyed. The debater. The debater doesn't argue because they're angry. They argue because it's fun. For them, every conversation is a battlefield, and every opinion is an invitation to spar. They'll switch sides mid-argument just to see if they can still win. They're quick, clever, and endlessly curious. Rules? Boundaries? Sacred cows? All fair game to poke holes in. They thrive in chaos, in brainstorming, in tossing out ideas that make everyone else stop and say, wait, could that actually work? The downside? Subtlety is not their specialty. They can steamroll people without realizing it, turning debates into destruction. But when a debater learns to use that energy for innovation instead of just provocation, they're not just entertaining. They're unstoppable. The executive? The executive is order incarnate. Structured, decisive, and commanding, they're the ones who make sure things get done, whether people like it or not. In their world, there's a right way to do things, and wasting time isn't on the list. They're natural organizers, the type who can walk into chaos and leave behind a working system. To them, efficiency isn't optional. It's sacred. That drive makes them reliable leaders, the kind who can keep a team on track when everything else is falling apart. But strength comes with shadows. Executives can be rigid, dismissive of nuance, and impatient with anyone who doesn't keep up. They risk becoming so focused on rules and results that they forget about people. Yet, when they strike the balance, executives don't just maintain order. They build structures that last. The provider. The provider is the friend who remembers to bring snacks, checks if you got home safe, and somehow manages to organize the group chat chaos into an actual plan. They live for connection, for making sure the people around them feel cared for. To them, kindness isn't just nice, it's necessary. They're generous with their time, their energy, and their attention. Providers want harmony, and they'll go out of their way to smooth over conflict before it even starts. But that same generosity can be a trap. They can become so focused on helping others that they forget their own needs. Still, at their best, providers are the glue in any community. They keep relationships strong, make traditions matter, and remind everyone what it feels like to belong. The protagonist. The protagonist walks into a room and people notice, not because they're loud, but because they carry purpose, like a torch. Charismatic, persuasive, and driven, they see potential in people before those people even see it in themselves. They thrive on leadership, not for the power, but for the chance to guide others towards something bigger. Protagonists believe in causes, in missions, in the possibility of changing the world. That passion is magnetic, inspiring others to follow them even when the path isn't clear. The risk? They can burn themselves out trying to save everyone. They may push too hard, convinced they know what's best. But when their passion is paired with humility, protagonists become the kind of leaders who don't just talk about change, they make it happen. The commander doesn't ask if something can be done. They ask who's going to do it, and when it'll be finished. Bold, decisive, and relentless, they're natural leaders who thrive in competition. To them, obstacles are just puzzles waiting to be solved, preferably faster than anyone else. They see inefficiency as the enemy, and they'll bulldoze through excuses without a second thought. That makes them powerful, but also intimidating. Commanders can come off as ruthless, pushing people harder than they push themselves, which is saying something. But here's the thing. They don't drive people out of cruelty. They do it because they see potential and won't accept less than excellence. When tempered with empathy, commanders aren't just leaders. They're visionaries who get results others only dream about. The advocate. The advocate is rare, quiet, but intense. They carry depth like a secret, seeing patterns and truths most people miss. While others skim the surface, advocates dive into meaning, searching for purpose in everything they do. They're compassionate, but not naive. Kind, but not weak. When they care about something, it isn't casual. It's consuming. They'll sacrifice comfort, time, even relationships to stay true to their vision of what's right. That integrity is powerful, but it can also be isolating, because advocates often feel like outsiders, misunderstood, even by people close to them. But when they find their voice, they don't just speak, they move people. They're the quiet revolutionaries, the visionaries who change the world not by force, but by the sheer gravity of their conviction. Every paradox explained. The Baldman paradox. So let's say you're standing in front of your bathroom mirror one morning doing the usual routine, brushing your teeth, looking at yourself, wondering where it all went wrong, and then you notice it. A single hair fell out. Okay, no big deal. You've got thousands more. Still, a thought hits you. If one hair falling out doesn't make you bald, and two hairs falling out doesn't make you bald, then at what exact point does baldness officially begin? Is it after 100 hairs, 500, 5,000? At what number do you officially cross the line from guy with a bad haircut to guy who just went bald? Because here's the paradox. No single hair seems like the deal breaker. But if you keep following that logic, you'd have to say that even a man with 0 hairs on his head technically isn't bald. Which makes no sense. He's definitely bald. Unless you're Bruce Willis, in which case bald is just your final evolution. This is called a Sorites paradox, and it shows how fuzzy language can screw with logic. Bald isn't a precise scientific measurement. It's just a vague word we all kind of feel our way through, which means depending on who you ask, you might already be bald. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me know in the comments how many hairs on your head you have left until you classify as bald. The time travel paradox. All right, let's fire up the flux capacitor and talk about time travel for a second. Imagine you build a time machine. Not some crazy gadget. Yours looks like a busted washing machine duct taped to a lawnmower. But somehow it works. You set the dial for 1920 and poof, you're face to face with your grandfather before he ever had kids. Now, for reasons best left unexplored, maybe he gave you terrible Christmas gifts, maybe you just don't vibe with him, you decide to take him out of the picture. Nothing personal, Grandpa, but you've been paradoxed. Here's the problem. If you succeeded, then your grandfather never had kids, which means your parents were never born, which means you were never born, which means you couldn't have gone back in time to do the deed in the first place, which means your grandfather is alive again? It's like a cosmic game of peekaboo where existence just glitches out. The paradox shows that time travel to the past breaks causality, which is the chain of cause and effect that reality is built on. Unless, of course, the multiverse exists. In that case, you didn't erase yourself. You just spawned a whole new universe where you're a monster and grandma is single forever. Either way, if you're planning on traveling back in time, maybe just shake your grandfather's hand and thank him for surviving the Great Depression. Don't, erase your own family tree. The barber paradox. Picture this. You roll into a tiny, one-road town in the middle of nowhere. Population? Probably like 43 people and a few wild animals. And in this town, there's exactly one barber. He's not just a barber. He's the barber. He cuts every man's hair, trims every beard, and shaves every face. But here's the deal. This barber has one very strict rule. He shaves all the men who do not shave themselves, and only those men. So if you're too lazy to shave, no problem, he'll do it for you. If you're the kind of guy who gets up at 5 a.m. and shaves himself clean, cool, you don't need him. Simple, right? Except who shaves the barber? If the barber shaves himself, then according to his rule, he shouldn't be shaving himself, because he only shaves men who don't shave themselves. But if he doesn't shave himself, then he falls into the group of men who must be shaved by the barber, which awkwardly is also him. No matter what he does, the rule breaks down. Basically, the barber is cursed to live in a paradox where he either shaves himself illegally, or he doesn't shave and still has to shave himself anyway. He's stuck in an endless cycle. Philosopher Bertrand Russell came up with this paradox to show how self-reference can completely derail logic. So, moral of the story? Don't live in a town where the barber is both the hero and the villain. The unexpected exam paradox. All right, let's go to school for this one. You're sitting in class, half asleep, doodling pictures of stickmen getting eaten by dinosaurs when your teacher suddenly says, "There will be a surprise exam next week. You won't know which day until I hand it out." At first, everyone panics, but then you start thinking. You're like, wait a second, this exam can't actually happen. You start breaking it down with some flawless logic. First, you eliminate Friday, because if Thursday rolls around and you haven't had the test yet, then obviously it's got to be Friday. But that means it wouldn't be a surprise, so it can't be Friday. Okay, cool. But if it can't be Friday, then it also can't be Thursday, because if it hasn't happened by Wednesday, Thursday would be the last possible day left, so it also wouldn't be a surprise. And using the same logic, you eliminate Wednesday, Tuesday, and finally even Monday. You smugly sit back like some kind of wish Sherlock Holmes and announce to your classmates, there will be no exam at all. Fast forward to Tuesday. You walk into class without your backpack, without a pencil, just vibes. And then, damn, the teacher slams a test down on your desk. You're caught completely off guard. Congratulations, you just failed the world's easiest paradox. This is the unexpected exam paradox, and it's basically a logic trap. If you try to outsmart the surprise, you reason yourself into believing the exam is impossible, but the very fact that you don't expect it anymore makes it possible again. Sometimes overthinking just cooks you. The liar's paradox. Imagine you're at a party, and for some reason, instead of talking to normal people, you decide to corner everyone with logic puzzles. You stand up on a chair, raise your red solo cup like a king, and announce, "I am lying right now." At first, people just stare at you. Then the headache sets in. Because if the statement, "I am lying," is true, then you're lying, which means the statement isn't true. But if it's false, then you're telling the truth, which means it's true again. You're stuck in a perfect loop of brain static where the words cancel themselves out, and everyone at the party suddenly regrets inviting you. This is the liar's paradox, and it's one of the oldest logic breakers in history. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece, where a philosopher named Epimenides, who, fun fact, was himself a Cretan, declared, "All Cretans are liars," which immediately raises the question. If he's telling the truth, then he must be lying. But if he's lying, then some Cretans must be telling the truth. And if you're not lost yet, congratulations, you're lying to yourself. So if you're ever tempted to bust this one out at a party, just remember, it doesn't make you look like a genius. It just makes everyone else quietly move away from you. The indescribable paradox. The word indescribable was created so that nothing can be truly indescribable. Think about that one for a moment. The moment you call something indescribable, you've literally just described it. If it truly couldn't be described, you wouldn't be able to slap a label on it in the first place. So either the thing isn't actually indescribable, or the word itself is lying. The Monty Hall paradox. All right, let's play a game. You're on a cheesy 70s game show, standing under hot studio lights while wearing a suit. The host, Monty Hall, greets you with a big smile and points to 3 doors. Behind one door, a brand new car. Behind the other 2, goats. You pick a door, let's say door number 1. Monty, who knows what's behind all of them, opens another door, say door number 3, and reveals a goat. Then he looks at you with his big game show grin and says, "Do you want to stick with your door or switch to the other one?" Now here's where the paradox kicks in. Most people say it doesn't matter. 2 doors left, 1 car, 1 goat. It's 50-50, right? Wrong. Switching actually doubles your odds of winning the car. If you stick with your first choice, you only have a 1 in 3 chance. But if you switch, you've got a 2 in 3 chance. Why? Because when you first picked, there was a 1 in 3 shot you chose the car, and a 2 in 3 shot you chose a goat. Monty's reveal doesn't reset those odds. It just hands you extra information. If you picked a goat originally, which is twice as likely, switching saves you. If you pick the car, switching loses it. The math says switching wins in the long run. And yet, even when people are told the math, most still stay with their gut choice. That's the real paradox. Human brains hate probability. We'd rather cling to our first bad decision than trust logic, which, come to think of it, explains dating, stock trading, and nearly all tattoos.
The birthday paradox. Okay, here's one that always blows people's mind. The birthday paradox. You're in a room with 23 people. Pretty small, right? That's not even a full classroom. But get this, there's a 50% chance that 2 of those people share the exact same birthday. Now, your gut immediately screams, no way. After all, there are 365 days in a year, 366 if you're one of those rare leap day mutants. So how could such a tiny group of people have matching birthdays? But that's where probability tricks us. See, you're not just comparing each person to one specific date. You're comparing every person to every other person in the... With 23 people, there are 253 possible pairings. That's 253 chances for a match. It's like flipping a coin. If you only flip once, odds are slim it lands on heads. But flip it a few hundred times, suddenly it's basically guaranteed. And the numbers get crazier. With 30 people, the odds jump to around 70%. With 50 people, it's a 97% chance someone shares a birthday. By the time you hit 75 people, it's almost certain. Which means if you're ever at a wedding and the DJ says, "Who here has the same birthday?" odds are at least 2 drunk dudes are about to high five. This paradox works because our brains are absolute garbage at understanding probability. We think in terms of one-on-one comparisons, when in reality the odds explode once you scale up the combinations. That's why casinos exist, and why math teachers cry themselves to sleep at night. The shuffling paradox.
All right, grab a deck of cards. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Now shuffle it. Congrats. You've probably just created something that has never existed before in the history of the universe. Sounds dramatic, but here's the math. There are 52 cards in a deck, and the number of possible ways to arrange them is 52 factorial. That's every number between 52 and 1 multiplied by each other. Do the math and you'll get an 8 followed by 67 zeros. To put that in perspective, that's more possible shuffles than there are atoms in our entire galaxy. So every time you shuffle a deck, odds are astronomically high that the exact order of cards in your hand has never existed before in the history of the universe. Not in Vegas, not in Monte Carlo, not in your family poker nights, never. And the kicker, it will never exist again either. You just created a unique cosmic arrangement. This is the shuffling paradox. Something as simple and ordinary as mixing a deck of cards is actually one of the rarest, most unique events you will ever cause. You think you're just killing time, but mathematically speaking, you just did something that will never happen again in all of history.